words of our Divine Mother. Our Divine Mother says, Thy voice is heard, my Lord. Thy voice is heard as a melodious chant in the stillness of my heart, and is translated in my head by words which are inadequate and yet replete with thee. And these words are addressed to the earth, and say to her, Poor sorrowful earth, remember that I am present in thee, and lose not hope. Each effort, each grief, each joy, and each pang, each call of thy heart, each aspiration of thy soul, each renewal of thy seasons, all without exception, what seems to thee sorrowful and what seems to thee joyous, what seems to thee ugly and what seems to thee beautiful, all infallibly lead thee towards me, who am endless peace, shadowless light, perfect harmony, certitude, rest, and supreme blessedness. Hearken, O earth, to the sublime voice that arises. Hearken and take new courage. With love and blessing, says our Divine Mother. Words of our Divine Mother. Topic: to become conscious of one's consciousness, localize it and place it in the psychic. Question: Sweet Mother, when you say concentrate in the heart, does it mean concentrate with the mind? For this, our Divine Mother says, the consciousness, not the mind, the consciousness. I do not say think in the heart, I say concentrate. Concentrate the energy, concentrate the consciousness, concentrate the aspiration, concentrate the will. Concentrate. One can have an extremely intense concentration without a single thought, and in fact, it is usually much more intense when one does not think. It is one of the most indispensable things to do if one wants to succeed in having self control and even a limited self knowledge. To be able to localize one's consciousness and move it about in the different parts of one's being in such ways so as to distinguish between one's consciousness and one's thoughts, feelings, impulses, become aware of the consciousness of what the consciousness is in itself. And in this way, one can learn how to shift it. One can put one's consciousness in the body, put it in the vital, put it in the psychic. That is the best place to put it in. One can put one's consciousness in the mind, can raise it above the mind, and with one's consciousness can go into all the regions of the universe. Our Divine Mother says, but first of all, one must know what one's consciousness is. That is, become conscious of one's consciousness and localize it. And for this, there are many exercises, but one of them is very well known. It is to observe oneself and to watch oneself living and see whether it is really the body which is the consciousness of the being, what one calls myself. And then, when one has realized that it is not at all the body, that the body expresses something else, then one searches in his impulses, emotions to see whether it is that, and again finds out that it is not that. Then one seeks in his thoughts whether the thoughts is truly himself, what he calls myself. And the end of a very short time, one becomes aware, no, I am thinking, therefore myself is different from my thoughts. And so, by progressive eliminations, one succeeds in entering into contact with something which gives you the impression of the being, yes, that's myself. And this something I can move around. I can move it from my body to my vital, to my mind. I can, even if I'm very practiced in moving it, I can move it into other people, and it's in this way that I can identify myself with things and with people. I can, with the help of my aspiration, make it come out of the human form, of my human form, rise above towards regions which are no longer this little body at all, and what it contains. A Divine Mother says, and so one begins to understand what one's consciousness is, and it's after that that one can say, good, I shall unite my consciousness with my psychic being and shall leave it there, so that it may be in harmony with the divine, so that it may be in harmony with the divine and be able to surrender entirely to the divine. Or else, if by this exercise of rising above my faculties of thinking, my intellect, I can enter a region of pure light, pure knowledge, then one can put his consciousness there and live like that in a luminous splendor which is above the physical form. But first, this consciousness must be mobile. One must know how to distinguish it from other parts of the being, which in fact are its instruments, its mode of expression. The consciousness must make use of these things, and not you mistake these things for the consciousness. You put the consciousness in these things, so you become conscious of your body, conscious of your vital, conscious of your mind, conscious of all your activities through your will for identification. But for this, first your consciousness must not be completely entangled, mingled, joined, so as to say with all these things. It must not take them for itself, must not be deceived. Our Divine Mother says, when one thinks of himself, obviously out of millions of men, perhaps there are not 10 who do otherwise. He thinks, myself, that's my body, that's what I call myself, what's like this. And so I am like that, and then my neighbor, he is also the body. When I speak of another person, I speak of his body. And so, as long as one is in this state, he is in the plaything of all possible moments and has no self-control. The body is the last instrument. The body is the last instrument, and yet it is this which one calls myself most of the time, unless one has begun to reflect. From the collective works of our Divine Mother, volume 7, page 249. Use of images for entering into the psychic being. Our Divine Mother says, this is a feeling one very often has in the beginning of the sadhana, that the psychic being is as though shut up in the kind of hard shell, a prison, and this is what prevents it from manifesting outwardly and entering into a consciousness and constant relation with the outer consciousness, the outer being. One has altogether the feeling that it is as though enclosed in a box or in a prison with walls which must be broken, or a door which must be forced in order to be able to enter. So naturally, if one can break the walls, open the door, it liberates the psychic being which was shut in, which can now manifest eternally. All these images, all these are images, but each person naturally has his own personal image, his personal method with small modifications. Our Divine Mother says some of these images are very common to all those who have had the experience. For example, when one goes down in the depths of one's being to find the psychic right at the bottom of one's consciousness, then there is this image of descending into a deep well, going down deeper and deeper, descending as it is as though one were truly sinking into a well. Naturally, all these are analogies, but they are associations with the experience of the impressions which give a great deal of force and concrete reality to the experience. Our Divine Mother says, as one goes on, the discovery of one's inner being, of all the different parts of one's being, One very often has the feeling that one is entering deep into a hall or a room, or according to the color, the atmosphere, the things it certainly has, one has a very clear perception of the part of the being one is visiting. And then one can go from one room to another, open doors, and go into the deeper and deeper rooms, each of which has its own character. And often these inner visits can be made during the night. Then it takes a still more concrete form, like a dream. One feels that he is entering a house, that this house is very familiar to him. And according to the time, the periods, it's internally different. Sometimes it may take in the state of a very great disorder, very great confusion. Everything is mixed up. Sometimes there are even broken things. It is quite a chaos. At other times, these things are organized, put in their place. It is as though these things are put in an order, arrange the house, one cleans it up, puts in order, as in the same house. This house is the image, a kind of objective image of your inner being. And in accordance with what you see or do there, you have a symbolic representation of your psychological world. It is very useful for concretizing. It depends on people. Some people say Sa Divine Mother, some people are just intellectuals. For them, everything is expressed by ideas and not by images. But if they are to go down into a more material domain, well, they risk not touching things in their concrete reality and remaining only in the domain of ideas, remaining in the mind, remaining there indefinitely. Then one thinks one is making progress, and mentally one has done so, though it is something altogether indefinite. The mind's progress may take thousands of years, for it is a very vast and very indefinitive field which is constantly renewed. But if one wants to progress in the vital and physical, well, this image representation becomes very useful for fixing the action, making it more complete and concrete. Naturally, it does not happen completely at will. It depends on each one's nature. But those who have the power of concentrating with images, well, they have more than one facility. Our Divine Mother says to sit in meditation before a closed door as though it were a heavy door of bronze. One sits in front of it with the will that it may open and to pass to the other side. So, the whole concentration, the whole aspiration is gathered into a beam and pushes against this door, pushes more and more with an increasing energy, until all of a sudden it bursts open and one enters. It makes a very powerful impression, and so one is as though plunged into the light, and then one has the full enjoyment of a sudden and radical change of consciousness with an illumination that captures one entirely, and the feeling that one is becoming another person. And this is very concrete and very powerful way of entering into contact with one's own psychic being. From the collective works of our Divine Mother, page 7, volume 7, page 266. Sadhana of the psychic transformation. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says, you have asked what is the discipline to be followed in order to convert the mental seeking into a living spiritual experience. The first necessity is the practice of concentration of your consciousness within yourself. The ordinary human mind has an activity of the surface which wields the real self, but there is another hidden consciousness within, behind the surface, in which we can become aware of the real self, of a larger, deeper truth of nature, can realize the self and liberate and transform the nature. To quiet the surface mind, begin to live within is the objects of this concentration. Of the true consciousness other than the superficial, there are two main centers. One is in the heart, in the physical, not in the physical heart, but the cardiac center in the middle of the chest, and one is in the head. The concentration opens within, and by following the inward opening, going deep, one becomes aware of the soul or the psychic being, the the divine element in the individual. This being unveiled begins to come forward to govern the nature, to turn it, all the movements towards the truth, towards the divine, to call down into it all the above. It brings down the consciousness of the presence, the dedication of the being to the highest, and invites the descent into our nature of a greater force and consciousness which is waiting for us. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo says the sadhana of the inner concentration is very necessary. The power of the concentration in the heart is to open the center, the power of aspiration, love, bhakti, surrender, remove the veil which covers and conceals the soul, brings down the soul of the psychic being to govern the mind, life, and body, and turn and open them all fully to the divine, removing all that is opposed to that turning and opening. And this is what is called in this yoga the psychic transformation. The sadhana of inner concentration consists of first fixing the consciousness in the heart, concentrating there on the idea, image, or the name of the Divine Mother, whichever comes easiest to you. Second, a gradual, progressive quietening of the mind by this concentration in the heart. Third, an aspiration for the Mother's presence in the heart and control by her of mind, life, and action. But to quiet the mind and get the spiritual experience, it is necessary first to purify and prepare the nature. This sometimes takes many years. Work done with the right attitude is the easiest means for that. That is work done without desire or ego, rejecting all moments of desire, demand, or ego when they come, done as an offering to the Divine Mother with the remembrance of her, prayer to her to manifest her force and take up the action, so that there too not only is the inner silence, you can feel her presence and working. From the collective works of our Lord Sri Aurobindo, volume 23, page 517, 725, and 533. These are the words of our Lord Sri Aurobindo and our Divine Mother.